Can you believe that Tetris is turning 40 years old? The legendary puzzle gaming series has been around just as long as I have, ported to so many different devices that it holds a Guinness Book World Record. Originally created by Alexei Pajitnov, a brilliant software engineer from the Soviets, Tetris captivated audiences from the get-go with its addictive gameplay loop. The goal of the game was simple: to fit together a variety of different shapes known as tetrominos and complete as many successful lines as possible to increase your score before reaching the top of the screen. There have been countless iterations of Tetris, many of which switch up the rules, but the core gameplay still mostly remains the same regardless of which version of Tetris you're playing. I could go on and on about the history of Tetris, but it might be easier for you to play Tetris Forever instead. So, does Tetris Forever set a new high score? Or do the pieces not quite come together? Let's find out in our full review. Real quick, I think you would be a perfect fit for our amazing indie gaming community. Head over to patreon.com/idreamofindiegames and you'll gain Discord access, early ad-free shows, shoutouts at the end of every video we produce, and so much more. But best of all, you're supporting indie and AA visibility. Your new indie gaming community is waiting for you. Tetris is undoubtedly one of the greatest video games of all time. Even people that don't normally play games are likely to, at the very least, know of its existence. This is a franchise that has sold over 200 million copies throughout its storied history, and is easy enough for just about anyone to pick up and play, but difficult to master. Naturally, when celebrating its 40th anniversary, you would hope that the series is given the proper respect that it deserves. Thankfully, Tetris Forever is not only a loving tribute to Tetris as a whole, but it's a great game in its own right, making this one celebration that you won't want to miss.
Way for me to access computers, and so I ended up working for my father in the gemstone business for 6 years, and then personal computers came out, and I go, oh my gosh, this is my chance.
First and foremost, this could make or break this for you. Tetris Forever should be viewed as more of an interactive documentary than a collection of the greatest Tetris games of all time. This is not so much a collection. That said, it does include over 14 releases from the series, alongside a brand new title called Tetris Time Warp. If that weren't enough, this package features an entire timeline of events that occurred throughout Tetris history. This includes interviews starring the influential figures behind the series, such as the original creator himself. Essentially, there's a full-on documentary here with over an hour and a half of footage split between different chapters. Alright, now that we're clear that this is not a gigantic Tetris collection, let's first discuss the games that are included in this package. Not only will you be able to play the very first iteration of Tetris that was originally released in 1984, but Digital Eclipse has also included a few releases that were previously only available in Japan. There's everything from Tetris Battle Gaiden, which almost has a Puyo Puyo feel to it, and it's really excellent, to Super Tetris 3. The Japanese games are not translated in-game, unless I missed something, but aren't exactly text-heavy either. At the least, there are manuals built into the game that not only include scans of the original booklets, but also English instructions on how to play each release. Each game is presented through the view of a monitor, and they all perform as you would expect. Selecting and quitting out of games is a breeze, as the menus are very well designed. Controls can be customized if certain titles feel too archaic for you, and there are also filters available if you want to achieve a true retro vibe. While not every game in this documentary feature is a winner, I'd say that the vast majority of selections were just as fun to play today as they were when they were released. While I will never be a fan of bombs in my Tetris games, it's nice to have options and so many different styles of Tetris in one package. And with many of these titles featuring multiplayer, there's still hours of fun for you to have. It's also fascinating to go through the evolution of Tetris one game at a time and see how much it changed. The games here really line up with the story that they're telling. That said, some players are definitely going to scoff at certain omissions, so your favorite Tetris game may not be here, but it also might not be a part of the story that's being told, if that makes sense. While the classic Tetris games are mostly wonderful, the new release that has been included, Tetris Time Warp, really steals the show. Time Warp can be enjoyed single player or with up to 3 others, and will have you warping through the different eras of the series as you play. What causes players to be transported is a time warp tetromino. these shapes will constantly flash between different eras, and whichever era it lands on is the one that you'll be transported to once you clear the line that the Tetramino rests on. Warping means being put against a time-based challenge, where you might need to clear a set amount of lines before time expires, or even explode a bomb, depending which era you land in. Successfully completing eras will further add to your score, with players being transported back to the main screen should they fail. It's a very fun mechanic that can throw your brain for a loop, considering that warping back in time also means dealing with that specific era's gameplay mechanics. If you are fortunate enough to land a gold Tetramino, it will destroy an insane amount of lines, potentially putting your opponent in a bad situation. Single player in Tetris Time Warp includes a decent variety of modes. There is Score Attack, Marathon, 3-Minute Time Attack, and 1989 Marathon. Each mode has its own set of rules, but they all offer up plenty of fun. If playing in multiplayer, you can of course dump garbage on your opponents and even watch them haplessly be warped through different eras. Overall, Tetris Time Warp is great. Me and Silent Signs had a blast going for high scores in single player and battling against each other. I can hardly wait to get 2 other players in on the action. And then we have the documentary footage. With this being part of Digital Eclipse's Gold Master Series, players who are familiar with previous releases that covered Karateka and Jeff Minter will feel comfortable with both the format and menu design used in Tetris Forever. You are allowed to scroll freely across a timeline and watch videos at your leisure. There are also historical photos covering much of the history of the Tetris series. As someone who just loves gaming history, each interview had me on the edge of my seat. Some of the footage is from years ago, decades ago, and is incredible to view today. And if you have even the slightest passion for video games, watching each and every video featured in Tetris Forever feels essential. But that's the tricky part with this release, because I feel like a lot of people are going to be confused as to what it is. Again, it's not really a Tetris collection. There's no fancy features built around it as far as online leaderboards, online multiplayer. That's just not really the point. You're really buying a documentary series of sorts that just so happens to include the games featured in that documentary. For some of you, that will be a big disappointment, but for me, as someone who loves gaming history, I just adored this title. You really have to go in with the mindset that I want to learn about Tetris, and it will be a nice little side bonus to have access to some Tetris games. That said, Tetris Time Warp is really fantastic. If they sold Tetris Time Warp on its own, I'd probably buy it, it's that good. But anyways, let's get to the final conclusion here. Here at I Dream of Indie Games, we believe that games are so much more than a number, which is why we have our wonderful 3 Genie Lamp tier system. A bronze lamp represents a good game with quite a few issues. A silver lamp is for a great game with just a few small issues. And there's the elusive golden Genie Lamp of approval for those essential indie releases that belong in your collection. We also have the rusty lantern for those mediocre titles that have just a faint glimmer of hope, and the dreaded indie Krampus for the ones you should avoid. And with all of that said, I'm going to settle on the silver Genie Lamp of approval for this release.
So this Pentamina set, I purchased it, I believe I was 14 or 15, and it was very simple stuff, but it was lots of enjoyment there. It is very creative stuff.